that we hold. As I informed in the earlier correspondence, we have held these workshops in Benin City and in Oka last year. We are now holding the one for Abuja, for the central area. We will move around the country until we have a core of really capable media people who understand audit reporting and how it helps our democracy. We'll start now, and I want to invite our chairman, who will welcome you all to this workshop. Mr. Abu was the managing director of the African Guardian, was managing director of New Age and editor-in-chief of New Age newspaper, and he has remained communication consultant. Those who are much older will recall that he was chief press secretary.
Apologizing that oftentimes when the best laid plans, are slightly derailed by factors we cannot control. We had especially this place yesterday. Everything was working the and all. But the hotel apparently also could not control the power situation. Because there was some kind of outage and NEPA blew up, something NEPA blew up, and therefore the ACs in certain sections were put out of action. But we've been working on it. We like to always start on time. We say 10 o'clock, it's a few minutes after 10. So we'll start straight away and we expect the full house. So by and by, those who are not used to keeping to time, hopefully will join us. Just before we came in here with my colleague Mr. Reiz, we recorded the statement of the former American Defense Secretary, Donald Rumsfeld, who said in life there are always known unknowns and unknown knowns. This is one of those things, and in Nigeria we have learned to live on the edge, and nothing takes us by surprise. And as journalists, we have so much experience of this that we are easily adaptable to all manner of situations. Like Mr. Wankama said earlier, this is one of the series of workshops that we are organizing to try and bring our colleagues up to speed on a very vital issue that affects the life of this country. We have to always pause to ask ourselves, what are the building blocks for accountability, for good governance, for democracy? For us, one prime area, which is often neglected, is the question of holding governments to account, holding institutions to account, holding ourselves to account. Accountability, for me, is the peg on which every unit of society, the family, the church, the mosque, institutions, that's the peg that holds them together. Because as a father, you are accountable to your wife and to the children are accountable to you, your wife is accountable to you, and so on. And from that unit, you go to school, the teachers are accountable to parents, also accountable to the pupils, and vice versa. So the issue of accountability is so important that we need to pay more than a cursory attention to it. Hence, we're having this workshop on its central peg of accountability. Those who spend their money, who holds them to account? What are the institutions for holding them to account? one of the things that annoys many of us is the way state governors fly all over the place. They hardly stay in their states, to look after the shop. Charter a plane, come to Lagos sometimes 2 or 3 times a week, and all that. But I don't see that they have provision in the budget. Who asks the questions? Who holds them to account? The Auditor General, which is a constitutional position, is supposed to point out, based on the report of the Accountant Generals, the areas of overspending, of embezzlement, of misspending, and so on. And then the State House of Assembly are supposed to now hold the governor to account based on those reports. And other institutions are weak. The governor gets in there, he puts pliant elements as speaker, as majority leader, and so on and so forth. And so no, hence we zeroed in on state government audits, as a vital area that we should pay attention to as journalists, That's my rough introduction. I'll try to run through this very fast. One thing that used to pain me, when I was in the field, is when you go on an assignment and then some big government official or the other says, "Oh, we have a press voice. Call me press voice." And you are referred to as a press boy because you look at you as some juvenile, infantile fellow who, for some money they put in what they call brown envelopes. They can make you write whatever they want you to write. Now, you and I should see that as an insult. Even if somebody gives you 100 million, they will compromise your character, your integrity. That's not something you should be able to go to bed, and sleep well. Even if you are earning 5 naira and you're able to organize yourself to live on that 5 naira, you sleep well. Your integrity is intact before God and before man. I think that's a better way of living than, for you to be compromised in any way. So as journalists, we have to insist on our integrity. We continue to do all this. Our churches are packed every Sunday, most except on Fridays. How come nothing has changed? Things are getting worse. Many of us are married, we have children. You want to hand your children a country that is this bad, that doesn't seem to have hope. Respect institutions, respect laws and systems, respect the public treasury. Money that is not yours, don't touch it, don't covet it. And because that way you can live with yourself. You can when you go to worship, your worship is sincere. The God you are praying to will listen to you. So let us respect the public treasury, respect institutions, respect systems, and so on. But you see, no matter how much we talk or preach about these things, the fact is rules and regulations have to be enforced. Because if you decide to respect the rules, somebody else may decide to do something different. So we must always have institutions and systems and rules that are enforced, so as to make them work better. You see, like I said, we can begin, like I said at the beginning, we can begin with ourselves to promote the change that we desire of this country. It's easy to sit down, blame politicians, blame Buhari of blessed memory, blame politicians, blame everybody but ourselves. And like I said, we are in a unique position because no institution, believe it or not, is as powerful as the media. No institution, And if we realize the power that we have, then I think we treat ourselves with more respect and with more dignity. It is to drive home this point, and like I said, that we're having this workshop. You see, the situation in the country, like I said earlier, the self-inflicted tragedies we have as a nation derive substantially from our failure to hold ourselves and institutions, our leaders to account. You know, and there's no place where this is more evident than at the state level, with state governors who behave like local warlords, local potentates, who can do anything and they get it, and so far they've gotten away with it. With all the ills of this country, how many governors are in prison? How many? You know, with all the malfeasance we've had over the years, I think virtually all the governors should be in prison, you know, given what we ourselves know and what we have seen. But how many of them are in prison? Because there is no accountability, institutions for holding people to account, you know, just do not function properly. Like I said earlier, the money belongs to you and I. It's not the state governor's money. It's not the president's money. It's not the money that belongs to the civil service. It's our money. Unless we don't care about the way your money is spent, you don't care about your children going to art schools, you don't care about policemen misbehaving on the road, you know, and so on. We ought to pay much more attention and draw the public's attention to those facts, so that we are all aware of the power that we have. As journalists, that power, the man on the streets, who is not a journalist, expects us to enforce that power, to enforce this accountability on his behalf. You know, and we cannot do that if we ourselves are compromised or we ourselves are not even aware of that power. So the impunity with which, you know, state governors, especially, but these days even public officials, where you heard about Accountant General here who spent how many billions?
He stole 90 billion.
90 billion. I mean, that's a country, the country has broken down. I mean, there's no system. How is one official able to have access to 90 billion? Steal it. Even having that access, it just says that the system is completely broken down. So on. But you and I, with in another 5-10 years, that is going to come out until he's running for president. And this country, we may think we have hit the bottom. And I know that the last 8 years, especially the Buhari regime, is the worst anybody ever imagined this country was going to get to. But this is why we're having this function, we're having this series. And we join you as our colleagues, as our friends in the profession, to please let us take this profession very seriously. You know, let us exert the power that the profession has given to us, that the Constitution has given to us as journalists. We don't have a voice. So I'd like to thank you, and I'm hoping that we're going to have a very vigorous, very robust discussion. We had this forum in Benin and Oka, like Mr. Wakaman mentioned earlier, and the discussions were very animated. All questions were asked and so on. These are meant to be a lecture, meant to be a workshop. Now we are going to raise issues, raise questions, and our relationship is going to start from this workshop. After this, we want to relate to you one-on-one and see what area we can help, what area we can advise, and so on. Because the ultimate purpose is to change this country for the better, to change our profession for the better, and change this country for the better. So I'd like to thank you for your attention. Thank you very much. And this workshop is on for today and tomorrow. Saturday we have a meeting with editors and so on. And we're hoping that, you know, as time goes on, our profession, especially all the economic headwinds, that our profession will be able to get back to self-respectability, and with the power that we have, we're able to use it for the public good. Thank you very much.
Someone kept to time, and we'll try to keep to time through this program. Please, may I urge everyone to wear their name tags, even though your names are not there. The hotel people came to tell us that everybody who comes to event here must put their name tags on. But we saw some challenging people who entered. Evidently, some people come here that they are attending an event, and they are actually not attending any event. Today, if you check the next presentation by Mr. Sonala Olumese, I might as well be introducing him to you while we're getting his presentation ready. Mr. Olumese was an editor in Punch long ago, and then founding editorial board member in The Guardian, founding editor-in-chief of This Week, and is a partner in FrontFoot media initiative.
He will be able to do himself via Zoom as soon as we're able to make that connection. Mr. Sonala is based in New York. He was supposed to be here, but there was a health situation, and he had to rush back to attend to it. That's why he's not here, but he will speak to us. But this is his paper, and I will read that paper for us. I will also share it while we try and connect so we can see him and hear from him. His paper is The Audit Imperative for Nigerian Journalism. Let's go. As we enter the campaign season for the 2023 elections, and now that it's over, I shall peg this presentation to that exercise using Chapter 11, Chapter 2 of the Nigerian Constitution as a campaign document. That chapter contains a curious document called The Fundamental Objectives and Directive Principles of State Policy. As opposed to a constitution, this will be the state's version of a manifesto. Every state in Nigeria should pay attention to the fundamental objectives and directive principles of state policy. That is where the state declares the quality of its heart and lays out the roses and chocolates for the citizens. The state shall foster. That document says, the state shall abolish all corrupt practices and abuses of power. The state shall preserve, protect, and promote. Shall provide free, compulsory, and universal primary education. It's there in our constitution. Our states, the Nigerian state says it will do this. It will provide free secondary education. Section 18(3), where the state gives with one hand and takes with the other, with the most egregious clause of all, in quote, as and when practicable. So the Constitution, the framers said the Nigerian state will do this, and then they excused themselves by saying as and when practicable. It focuses on the legislature. Part 1 of it deals with the National Assembly, and Part 2 with the House of Assembly of a state. That part, the relevant parts, contains a section called Powers and Control over Public Funds. Our attention here arises from Section E, Powers and Control over Public Funds, that is, of the state. These provisions are to be found in Sections 125, 126, and 127. For purposes of this discussion, I will present 6 highlights. Please pay attention to these highlights. 1. The governor appoints but does not control the Auditor General. The Auditor General of the state is appointed by the governor on the recommendation of the State Civil Service Commission and confirmed by the House of Assembly. Once that has happened, the Auditor General is not accountable to the governor or supervised by the governor or any other authority. The Auditor General is supposed to be like INEC, independent. Supposed to, once you've gone through that process of checking his bona fides and all that, and you say, yes, we are satisfied, you be the Auditor General. Nobody controls him any further. 2, he audits the public accounts of the state and all offices and courts of the state within 90 days of receiving the Accountant General's financial statements and annual accounts of the state, and in turn submits his reports to the House of Assembly for the consideration of the committee responsible for public accounts. The Auditor General has the authority to undertake periodic checks of all government statutory corporations, commissions, authorities, agencies, including all persons and bodies established by any law of the House of Assembly of that state. The governor has the authority to appoint persons to act in the office of the Auditor General, but such an acting capacity is only legal for 6 months. If there is no Auditor General, the governor can appoint, but that appointment lasts only 6 months. You need to then appoint a substantive person, unless the governor obtains the approval for such a purpose or a resolution of the House of Assembly to shift it. Not remove us. You don't have such a power by the provisions of the Constitution. The governor cannot unilaterally remove a duly appointed Auditor General unless that follows the intervention of 2/3 of the membership of the House of Assembly asking for such action on these grounds: inability to discharge the functions of his office or misconduct. The governor cannot sack him. 2, he has to stay until it's due for retirement. Prove misconduct on his part, that he has done something wrong, something that the Constitution says he should not do. The servant of our Constitution, not of the government. The Constitution enables him, ennobles him, empowers him. In summary, the Auditor General is responsible only to the people through the House of Assembly, and once he is appointed, he can remain in office until he retires or he dies. That makes him a powerful, independent institution and servant of the Constitution. The Auditor General has a significant role in governance. His work can be pivotal, as that work is reflected in his reports, rather than any arbitrary edicts or political pronouncement. It's in principle a powerful measure of the state of governance of a state. For that to be the case, however, those reports must be issued and duly delivered to the legislature. In the past 24 years now, that may not always have been the case. I pause to pay tribute to those states in which every year the House of Assembly has taken delivery of the annual report, or failing to do so, called on the Auditor General to fulfill his or her duty. Again, in the past 23-24 years, that may not always have been the case. Tomorrow, we'll have a chart that shows you the states that are actually submitting Auditor General's reports of our 36 states plus FCT. Some states submit, some states are current, many states are 5 years behind, 6 years behind. The Auditor General is appointed, but he does not submit at least an annual report. What does that mean? If an Auditor General is in office, but only something called a financial statement appears in the records, what does that mean? Let me proceed by attempting to answer these questions. Each such development would obviously be an aberration and a violation of a constitution which clearly sets extremely high store by these audit reports. If a state does not appoint an Auditor General, that would clearly mean that the executive branch of government has failed in this most important duty. So a state must appoint an Auditor General. If an Auditor General of a state is appointed to the office, but he does not duly submit an annual report, with no questions asked by the governor, or, and this is even more important, the legislative branch to which the Auditor General is supposed to report, that would suggest not simply that the entire system is dangerously broken, but that it has collapsed. if an Auditor General is in office, but only a curious document called a financial statement mysteriously appears in the record, that would mean that for some reason, the financial report prepared by the Accountant General did not reach the Auditor General, but was accepted by the executive branch as though it were the audited report. Some of these inexplicable scenarios have emerged in these 23 years, but few, if any of them, have hit the headlines, our headlines. The Constitution gives a clear role to the media. Section 22, and I hope we all know it, Section 22 of the Constitution, that is our ground norm, that empowers us as journalists. It says, the press, radio, television, and other agencies of the mass media shall at all times be free to uphold the fundamental objectives contained in this chapter and uphold the responsibility and accountability of the government to the people. That's our constitutional charge, to uphold the responsibility and accountability of the government to the people. The Constitution gives us authority. What role for social media? The younger ones among us may be upset here and argue that there is a clear bias in favor of the mainstream media as against what I call the mass stream media, that is, social media. Evidently, the founding fathers had never heard of social media when they wrote this thing, first in 1979 and later in 1999. Of Section 22 for all of us. With Section 22, the Constitution arms the mass media to provide for those who wield political power the critical and overriding oversight function, the objectives of Chapter 11, Chapter 2. But it is significant that it vests the mass media with this freedom, this duty, this challenge, a certain kind of patriotic body to uphold the responsibility and accountability of the government to the people. That's our charge. You say to the media, no, that's not your job. You shouldn't do this. In other words, you shouldn't hold us accountable. 23 years, going on 24, we have been free to uphold this fundamental objective. We have this cudgel in the palm of our hands. Responsibility and accountability are heavy concepts. I dare say that it may have meant far more to the founding fathers than to the politicians of today. That is not necessarily strange. There is often competition between the present and the past. And in politics, those who hold power often focus far more on power than responsibility. Accountability at all times. But we in the mass media are unfettered, or at least challenged at all times to undertake this responsibility of holding power holders to account on behalf of the people. It is partly on account of this call to duty in Section 22 that FrontFoot has organized this training module as one of its targeted training programs to draw closer attention to one area of responsibility to which insufficient attention is being paid by the mass media: state audits, by which people may be apprised of how state officials manage or mismanage state resources. We aim to sensitize our industry more deeply to this opportunity towards broadening the boundaries of transparency and accountability in our country, to arm each reporter and each newsroom with an authority to which they may have paid scant attention. To us as professionals falls the constitutional duty to remind politicians, perennially and perpetually, that they work for the people and must account to them, or power to use over politicians in the public interest. It is a weapon which grows weaker every time the journalist permits himself or herself to be compromised in the course of a story, in it, or not to publish at all. So you are pursuing a story and they say, see there, why don't you just leave this? And you fall for the blandishment. Or the worst, you dare not publish that. They threaten you. empowered, therefore, only by our individual and collective courage. Every newsroom in our industry, how strong is our newsroom? How is our newsroom? Is our newsroom such that when you bring a story that shows the wrongs being done, you say, you see, my friend, that he has undermined you and Section 20. Confidence and write our family unequivocal thoroughness and credibility. And when we connect to him, we can answer free.
See, as journalists, in doing what is expected of us, this country will be different. And all of you as journalists, I was asking the guy from the Guardian, I said, have you ever heard of Emeka Izeze? He said, somewhere. I said, okay. So I left it. And I didn't tell him that I was the last MD editor-in-chief of the Guardian. He didn't know. So we have a lot of training to do. First, the media must recognize the importance of its role in this country. If you complain so much and you read newspapers, everything is criticism and everybody is doing the wrong things, but we in the media are doing the wrong things ourselves. You don't have that the governor has no right to fire Auditor General. Two presentations, I'm sure many of you didn't know that before you came here. The introduction by Mr. Abuja said exactly what is going on in Cross River. And the governor has backed down. Beside that, the Auditor General and the deputy and the Auditor General of the local government have gone to court. So until they reach the age of retirement or the case is adjudicated on, the governor is not going to be able to do anything to them. It will change. Also, who wants to bother about who is president? All of you, only those of you living in Abuja will bother about the president. All of the president, if you quarrel with the governor in the state, you can't live in the state. But you can abuse the president yet, and you still live in Abuja. Am I right? Please, let's take it for 5-10 minutes before Mr. Makaba returns to now give his own presentation. He just presented Mr. Lumese's own, then he will give his own live presentation. Anybody? Any comment?
I work with the Whistler newspaper online. I just have 2 questions or maybe comments. And the first one is based on the presentation, there are timelines where the Auditor General, the auditor, is supposed to get the financial statement from the accountant general.
From the accountant general.
Yes, and most times, based on our reporting, these timelines are not usually followed. Sometimes 3 months, the law says 3 months, sometimes 6 months. But the auditors don't get this report on time. So when they get the report, it affects the time when the reports are worked on and audited and when they are submitted to the National Assembly. Then secondly also, when these reports are sent to the National Assembly, they don't act on it most times because some of these reports may have indicted them or the agencies they supervise. So my question now is, how, beyond reporting, because sometimes we bring this into the public, beyond reporting, how do we ensure that these timelines or all these lacunas are addressed? Thank you.
Some of the reasons why we're here. What do you do when the Auditor General of, I take it even you're either from Anambra or Enugu or Imo or Abia, or parts of rivers or parts of Delta, that the governor of one of those states has not, the Auditor General of one of those states has not done his work within the timeline. That's a story in itself. You understand? If are you following me? That's a story that we journalists do not know about and we have never written about. all the time we write in the states, we write what the governor is doing, or in the federal, in Abuja here, what the president or National Assembly is doing. But we're dealing with stories that are on the table. Why has the Auditor General not submitted the report within the time limit given? By the time you have asked questions, you have done your research, you have gone to those sections of the Constitution that gave those requirements. When that story is published once, twice, I can assure you that Auditor General will begin to submit report as and when due. The governor needs to see before it is made public. You must have seen it in this presentation. The Constitution says it is not just you submit, the report must be published every year. The man who was Auditor General in Abuja here, and you notice he published a report and they got rid of him quickly. Why was it easy? The executive and the legislature worked together to get him off. And when that happens, it is the media that ought to be drawing attention to what wrong has just been done. You don't care where the man came from. You care about the office he occupies. When we had our workshop like this last year in Oka for Enugu State and Anambra State, one of our presenters was a former Auditor General of the state. Now you couldn't come and harass him. Even when he was still in the service, he had been made a permanent secretary, I think. He was still able to tell, he said, look, the Auditor Generals are very qualified professionals. They have rules given to them by ICANN. You must operate like this. And the Constitution gave them that as it gave us journalists our own rules of engagement. But he said the last man that attempted to stand by those rules, you know what happened to him. But if we get an example, we are not giving you the example of the Auditor General of Cross River State. And the story is now everywhere. When we started this thing last year, no Auditor General dared tell a governor, you cannot do this to me. But now, Auditors General are telling their governors, you don't even have the power to sack me. An Auditor General. They're the same way. In other words, an Auditor General has power almost like a governor. Actually, one of the few people that can get a governor removed is the Auditor General. That's all. An assembly in the state or national assembly here in the Federal Capital Territory can impeach the president or a governor on that account. Needs to know about this and use it. So if the man didn't publish at the end of 3 months, you just go to the office of the Auditor General, start asking questions. Why is the law and the assembly people will begin to work hard to follow the rule? We must get people to live by the rule in this country. So that's very, very important. We're going to get back to this your issue because you have other powers that you will follow. I just told you, go and do a story on it. That's one. And the second issue you raised was on, remind me again.
Underfunding.
On underfunding. Actually, that's a breach of the Constitution also. That again is a story. The Auditor General's office will not tell you, they will not cry to the press to say we are deliberately underfunded. But the moment you notice there is underfunding and sources speak to you, raise questions about it. Go and question the people who are supposed to release the money that has been provided for them in the year's budget. By the way, someone will be talking to us about the linkage between budget and Auditor General's account. We will get that in the process. All of them, it's just a master class in a very a brief period that we'll be getting during this period. So that's also is the story. The power, let's accept anyone has another comment. Yes? She has a...
Good morning, everyone, and Good morning, everyone, and I want to say thank you to the organizers of this program for the enlightenment for the media people where I belong. And my question is on the last part of the presentation, where the presenter said, noted on the fact that the media people are faced with a lot of challenges, which you also mentioned. You said, you talk about the problem of threat from the high and mighty, those in position of power, especially the governor. We are talking about the state. And I want to believe that every journalist knows their power, that we have. The question is, where is the security of the journalist? For example, if I may have to use a particular state, Kogi State, where I come from, as an example, there is no civil servant in Kogi State that can dare the government, as at the moment. If you visit Kogi State and you have the opportunity to meet with the members of the press, you will pity them, because you will begin to imagine whether they have a role to play in the state, whether they are functional or they are dormant. And that informs my question to say, where is the security of the journalist in such a state? Because this will definitely affect their reportage. Thank you.
And it is good we're near the state and we can take it, and I'm glad you raised it. When I was an editor, listen to me, because you can suggest it to your people. And we're going to get all the bureau chiefs and the editors of newspapers here on Saturday, only them and some publishers. When I was an editor, there are stories I wouldn't let the state correspondent do. The state correspondent may get the stories. He may do the background and everything, and then we'll send somebody from Lagos, go there and do the story. You know why? Because we know what can happen with government. In fact, we have done stories where governors will even be requesting that we must move state correspondents. And because Guardian was different, we told the governor that he had no right to tell us which will report the state. He can withhold information, but we'll find information other ways. But a governor to tell us, remove the state correspondent, these days, and I understand what you're saying, things have been going from bad to worse. One of my former staff is called Alifa Daniel. You will know him. If you don't, there may be some journalists who will know him. Alifa also did some work in Kogi. Now, till today, Alifa is deformed. In fact, they poured acid on him. Yeah. And a governor who is dead now was accused of being responsible for that. I think these days they don't even pouring acid seem to be like a child play. They will just kill.
Yes.
So we understand. But we will protect our people. So if you didn't do the story, they will know the name of the person that did the story. But you saw the story. Because if the story is not done, the state and the people are not being served well. You see, it is good when the presentation is going on, note immediate questions. These questions you raise, we're going to get Mr. Lumese, whose paper we're discussing, to also address the three of them. Because I know you have answers for all of them. Thank you.
Nice to be with you again. We are going to be talking about the principles and purposes of public interest journalism. I have highlighted it because that's really what we are addressing. Overarching purpose. We commence by underlining purpose. All journalism seeks to serve the public interest. That's what we claim. That's what we should do. The public interest content that journalism serves is about the lives and well-being of citizens. It's about relevant issues that affect individuals and communities. It's about the common good in health, in livelihoods, in quality of life, in security, in accountability and governance. Note that the public interest is not merely what people find interesting. It is more of relevant issues different from what is entertaining, fascinating, or titillating. Our friends who do what we called then pejoratively junk journalism, but who do human interest, light-hearted stories, they also talk about public interest. But the public interest that we should be doing as journalists, the larger public interest, is about governance, it's about health, it's about livelihoods, the quality of life, security, and all that. Yeah. So, what is this purpose of journalism? Journalism's purpose or central philosophy is constant. The primary purpose of reporting is to provide citizens with the information they need to be free, to live well, and be self-governing. That's what we do. That's why they pay attention to us. We provide them with the information, with the news, with the guidance that they need to be free, to live well, and to be self-governing. News serves the public interest. Our job is for building the community, for citizenship, and for better governance. One, we support and promote the free exchange of ideas. We help society, but should pay attention to what citizens should watch out for. The Senate resumed yesterday. What are the issues? Or what are the issues before the 10th Senate that we are familiar with? Include informing, educating, guiding, entertaining, interpreting, forming opinions, spreading awareness, serving as notice board. Those are the things that we do that are critical. The gentleman Albert Camus, who says, democracy is healthiest when the public is informed about the activities of captains of industry and chieftains of public office. Melvin Mentor, author and editor. And here's another one. Our calling will always be rooted in two commitments difficult to observe. Refusal to lie about what we know and resistance to oppression. We refuse to lie about what we know. It's better that we don't know it. But if as a journalist we know something, we will not say we do not know. We will not lie about it. It plays a critical role. Yes, Joseph Stiglitz, the Nobel laureate in economics. It is now generally recognized that better, more timely information results in better, more efficient resource allocation. The information that we provide helps the economic system. There has never been a family in any country that has been a democracy with a relatively free press, and no of no exception. The media is free. We can report on market conditions. We can report on health conditions. We can report on the farms, what's going on, just as and the effect on the prices of goods in the market. Is to provide citizens with accurate and reliable information they need to function in a free society. The governor said may be useful, but we need to go beyond that. We need to tell people, okay, governor has said, but here is what the market is saying. Here is what the schools are saying. Here is what the healthcare facilities are saying, and all that. What is the best school if your child is about to enter secondary school in the FCT? Does anybody know? Has any of you reporting in Abuja done a story on the top 10 schools in Abuja for your schools? The top 10 schools. To do that story, You don't sit on your desk. You have to go out and work. And one of the easiest criterion that you can think of, a useful criterion, is performance in public exams. Which school or which schools have the best performance in junior WAEC and in senior WAEC? So you can get it from WAEC. Which schools in Abuja, which schools in Nigeria have the best performance? You publish that story. Now, what will happen to your blog or to your newspaper? Increased attention, because it's a topic that affects almost every family. We want to know where, instead of depending on us, people are asking their neighbors. They are going to the bar and what my people go free enter school. Which school? They say it's not him. He will say they say that there is this good school there. Nothing. But we as journalists should be the ones doing that work, helping our citizens to have information they can use for their lives. One of the major criticisms that people have about us is that we just report what the governor said. Speeches and statements, instead of the things that affect the lives of the people, their lives. Yes, the Constitution enjoins us to practice public interest journalism. The 1999 Nigerian Constitution provides the legal cover for the functioning of the press in Nigeria. It charges the press to play a watchdog role over government. Section 11, Chapter 2, Subsection 22, Section 2, Chapter 2, Subsection 22. Actually, we often speak of it as 2:22 says, the press, radio, television, and other agencies of the mass media shall at all times be free to uphold the fundamental objectives contained in this chapter and uphold the responsibility and accountability of the government to the people. That's our charge, the constitutional obligation to us. The Constitution says we must do that. And what are these fundamental objectives and directive principles of state policy? The Constitution spells them out. And to serve as watchdog, all journalists must know what they are. In other words, every journalist ought to have a copy of the Constitution. Do you have a copy of our Constitution? You have it? Yes. Who else has a copy of our Constitution? Amongst the books on your shelf or on your phone, who has a copy of our Constitution? You do. Or you have it on your phone. You can download it. Yeah? On his phone. Yes. You either have it or you don't. But really, it's one of our tools. We ought to have it. We should have a minimum of 3 copies. Just in case somebody comes and borrows. It's our tool. You know? I teach at the School of Media and Communication, Pan Atlantic University. And usually for this section, my class, we will go through the fundamental objectives and directive principles of state policy. I didn't want to do that because it takes time and it will take from the time we need to discuss this. But I usually ask the students to go and check it out. Principles. Principles are important in journalism and in other fields. Principles refer to a fundamental truth or proposition that serves as the foundation for a system of belief or behavior or for a chain of reasoning. Principles are fundamental norms, rules, or values that represent what is desirable and positive for a person, a group, an organization, or community, and help it in determining the rightfulness or wrongfulness of its actions. Principles are more basic than policy and objectives and are meant to govern both. 10 key principles of journalism. They are verification, objectivity, originality, completeness, transparency, fairness, restraint, humanity, accountability, and empowerment. They provide a useful handle. For instance, verification and objectivity concern gathering the story. When you are gathering a story, the two key principles you should bear in mind are verification. Have you verified? The stories that we tell have impact, shape the people of society. So let's gathering the story, verification and objectivity. If we do not have this well, it gives a poor foundation. And as we know, poor foundations endanger buildings. So the principles of verification and objectivity apply in fact that verification is a foundational principle of journalism. All of them speak to the care that the journalist must exercise in putting his story together. You have gathered your facts, right? But now is to tell that story. So, and our experts say you have to be careful in how you tell your story. Originality is creating something new. Every report or feature a journalist writes involves creating a new thing. The principle of originality requires that the journalist tell the story from her own observations and in her words. And this is based outside Abuja. Is this what you do? Originality? Are you original in your reporting? Hello? Let's hear from each other now. Are you original? Yeah? Because the feedback from our audiences is that we are often unoriginal. Indeed, 70% of the time, we are not original. 6.5 billion naira with a rider, how to get your share of NAFTA. Good story. People picked it up. Who is this man sitting on 5 billion? Picked it up. So they read the story. Many years later, I had forgotten about the time. I saw the gentleman on an Abuja to Lagos flight. So I went and greeted him and introduced myself. He screamed, "Hi! Are you the one? You people put me in trouble." What are you talking about? We wrote a damn good story that everybody loved, including you at that time. He said, "Yes, but nobody in his community, nobody amongst his friends, people believed that he was actually sitting on 5 billion naira, as we said. This man's of 5 billion. He could not give anybody small amount of money. This wicked uncle. I read the story. They said you are sitting on 5 billion, and now I come here and you are giving me only 1,000. What that we do, without meaning to cause harm, we just wanted to tell our story. So sometimes you have to check again. This story that I'm telling, this headline, will it affect people negatively? As Rotary people says, will it affect people? Check. We did not, for the love of it, there is no way we would have thought that we did anything wrong. We followed all the rules. We found a good headline. We found how to humanize the story, make it so that, because numbers, people find it difficult to relate to numbers. 5 billion, not me today. Yeah. For actions. The journalists must always be accountable. We are talking about accountability of government officials, but it starts with us. There are 2 levels of accountability in journalism. Personal, the journalist takes responsibility for the stories that he writes. You say, "Okay, I don't feel write that story." Or, "Okay, can I write it this way and that way? Because it will have my byline." Indeed, one of the experiences I've had in the Guardian newsroom those days, Elizabeth Obadino was woman editor. She was a white woman. She wrote a story on Mary Slesor's anniversary. And Femi Kusa went and provided background, details. The story was then very rich. So she saw the first edition and came and said, remove my dialogue. No. It's not my story. It's nice, it's very rich, it's very detailed, but I did not write it. Saying, positive story, and many journalists will grab it and it's a news editor that added salt and pepper and all the spices that made it that detailed. The journalist, through his reportage, empowers people. He does this by providing correct facts about situations and motivation for better citizen engagement in the affairs of society. We inform them accurately. Here is the true situation of this thing. The more they know, the more empowered they feel, and they know that, yes, we can handle this situation. All right. So, all of which makes for a free press, which speaks facts and ideas that keep people informed, helps people talk with their governments, gives people a way to point out when their rights are taken away or ignored, helps lawmakers understand what people think about their actions, are we helping them understand, and disseminates information and ideas among citizens, contributing to a people's common storehouse of knowledge. That's where we are. We should be that free press. So, this is the background. I will now take the final part, the elements. Reporting is the foundation of journalism. Reporting and writing the news are the bedrocks. Journalism, the American Press Institute asserts, is the activity of gathering, assessing, creating, and presenting news and information. It's also the product of these activities. Journalists seek, gather, and report the news about happenings in society. They report to citizens as audiences. So, and journalism is communication. That's why you go to study mass communication in the past. Now it's changing. That rubric, mass communication, they've broken it down. So when you go to study that, but the communication that we do in journalism is distinct from other communication activities by certain characteristics and attributes. Here are the purpose of journalism is to provide people with verified information they can use to make better decisions. Journalism is ultimately utilitarian. If we are not useful to people, they just, you tune to some channels on TV and like, what's that? Not useful to some people. Maybe some children love it, some other set of people love it, but for you, it's not utilitarian. So you switch off, you move on to other things. Practices. So the purpose of journalism is to be useful. Practices. Journalism deploys a systematic process with not just the facts, but the truth about the facts of things it reports. And I've mentioned to you the behavior of your news editor, of your line editor. Are you sure of this, your story? Are you sure? What happens now when a story breaks? Who reports it first? If a story breaks, how do we get it? Who reports it first? Yes, sir? Where do you read breaking news? Social media, online. Yes. But when you have read it, what happens? Yeah? You dig further. Where do you go to dig?
You depend on the story.
my experience and other people's experience is that the story breaks, you read it online, and most people then wait the next day or to say, Daddy, I don't report them. Punch don't report them. This day don't report them. Why is that so?
We see those mainstream media
As more credible. They practice the discipline of verification. We have, over the years, trusted them to verify before they publish.
Yes.
But you know that online, a lot of the blogs, they hear a rumor and they go to town. That's what we say, that we are truth tellers. We bear truth. 2, our first loyalty is to citizens, not to your editor, unfortunately, not to your publisher, but to citizens as your audience, as your readers. 3, the essence is a discipline of verification. We check everything that we publish and must go through verification. Each practitioner must maintain an independence from those they cover. Don't say because you are covering the Ministry of Finance, you have become the finance staff. You've heard that. A lot of our people, they cover the ministry and they begin to speak as if they are the minister in that place. Sorry, that's not your job. Your job is to tell us their own side and the other side, not to serve as their spokesperson. You must detach yourself. It's a difficult thing to do, but you must detach yourself. We must be an independent monitor of power. You see how many times independent keeps featuring there, you know? We must provide a forum for public criticism and compromise. We have done well in this respect. Our radio stations, our TV stations have channels where people come and talk and expose situations and all that. We have a family that brings people and then people interview them and question them about what they have done and all that. It's a departure from what we had at the beginning of radio in Nigeria. Who is Yoruba here? Yes. What did the Yoruba call radio initially? Asonomatis. Because all it did was just speak, no response. So we have moved away from there. We now have response. You tune in, you phone in and say, hey, Mr. Presenter, I don't think that fact is correct. Here are the correct facts. You know, it's a major development, and that's what we do. Forum for Public Criticism and Compromise. It must strive to make the significant, interesting, and relevant. Not too much on either trivia or important matters. Younger people, when they open the Guardian, they turn off a mass of grey matter, and they can't understand why you, an adult, are spending so much time reading this. Sometimes even CNN, can't understand it. They say it covers only debts, trouble, you know, all the trouble. There is so much trouble in the world, according to that kind of media. So it should be trouble. So you have to balance. Most importantly, journalism is required to cover all groups. Exercise of personal conscience. Always let your conscience be your guide in our profession. You must be ethical and responsible. Each journalist is required to insist on fairness and accuracy. Exercise of personal conscience sometimes calls for the journalist to pay a high price of speaking up against his colleagues, his employers, the people you are reporting, the governor, and all of those powerful people. It's a tough call. But one of the things that we must know as we enter journalism, it is not for the faint-hearted. at all. And every journalist must prepare for the day when his story will cause trouble. You have experienced it. You write a story and it causes trouble. And then they call your editor. If you have a good editor, if you have a good publisher, no problem. And a refresher, go forth and do great works. Thank you.
Earlier on, if you have one or two comments or questions, like I said, tomorrow we'll have a more exhaustive, over an hour, to raise all issues that have arisen. But because we expect you to be questioning things now, people have done 3 stories already. People have raised 3 questions, and those 3 questions are, in my view, 3 different stories that can be written, all deriving from this workshop. Maybe your own is not a story idea. Do you have any comment based on it, or ask question on the basis of your practical experience? Maybe some of the things you said are things you know are not going to be easy to implement now, to practice now. You can also ask.
My name is James, with this name. I want to thank Mr. Chido for the wonderful presentation. I've known him for a very long time. I don't know if he still remembers me, because I visited him at his Lagos office way back. I wanted to apply for a vacancy. So I want to say that from what you've discussed so far, one of the challenges we face, and it would be good if we can have suggestions on how we can, bypass some of these constraints. The one that comes to mind is the influence of publishers, the interest in our organizations. It's used to hinder us. It's not as if sometimes we can't do stories, but sometimes even halfway into pursuing a story, you are asked to drop it. For instance, there's been a time my bureau chief specifically asked me to pursue a story with, the idea was, brought up in the editorial meeting, and they said, who covers this place? They said, they won, and they said I should follow up. And then when I got to the place, and I had to see the corporate communications man, and then he said, okay, I will have to wait and let him talk to the CEO. And I waited for like 4 hours. Nothing was forthcoming. And eventually, when I had the time to see the CEO, as I was entering, good afternoon, ma'am. Just sit down. And the next thing I saw was, I met her on the phone, and as I was sitting down, she just extended the phone to me, said, somebody wants to talk to you. And I collected the phone. It turned out to be my publisher. And I had, what's the problem? I said, okay, we have information complaints about this organization, and I've been detailed to investigate. He said, who sent you? I said, actually it's from the meeting, and my bureau chief presided over the meeting, and he said, tell him to call me. And that was the end of the journey. So most of the times, interest. For instance, these days, almost all the heads of parastatals, they make sure that they have the phone contact, some kind of relationship with media owners. Note that sometimes the environment we find ourselves as journalists, we know that there's this freedom of information act that is on ground that we should be able to utilize, and the act demand for information and from these agencies. But indeed, we know that even if you write, you don't still get anything. And who are you going to hold responsible? Sometimes in the system, because it appears that everybody's hand is soiled. You know, you can't get justice anywhere. Like for instance, media organization, media owners will not remit your pension. You go to PENCOM will say they have all the powers by the act to move against such people, and they will not do anything. So what's the problem? All these things affect our work
of your organization, of your boss. It's difficult to work. However, there are two rules of management that you must observe scrupulously. Rule 1, the boss is always right. Rule 2, when the boss is wrong, refer to Rule 1. The man who defines public interest on your behalf as the one who signs the medium, your editor or your publisher, has said that, for some reasons now, this thing is no longer in the public interest. What you do is pursue other stories. The opportunity will come when you still tell that story. 2, find a way of telling that story indirectly. What do I mean? This challenge concerns this organization. Here is how this other organization has sorted out the challenge. Tell the story of the one that has solved the problem, and then a comparative analysis that these other guys have a similar problem but they haven't solved it. You may not even mention them. You can use innuendo. You can use whatever. We have the word power to describe without calling names. Emotional quotient, the social quotient, and the adversity quotient. We must use them for our purposes. It doesn't mean cowardice. It just means playing smart. The opportunity will come. That you didn't do that story today doesn't mean you can't do it next week or next month or next year. You bid your time and wait. Thank you.
Somebody says that is new now, not even from online newspapers, that's coming from mainstream newspapers. A text message to the corporate affairs manager or the chief press secretary in a text message for a story. Say a text message was not responded to us at press time. I'm sure you are reading all of that in the newspaper. It simply makes us look like we're insincere or lazy, dishonest, or a combination of all. And which may well not be it. You may even have gone there and the people refused to see you. Said, we called at the office, what stops you from detailing it? At the office, we got there, we asked this question, nobody was willing to speak on record. Unofficially, we got this information off the record. And the organization's spokespersons or chief executive or whoever, they were not available to speak at the time we called. And when you still eat like that, they'll go and check. Did the journalists come here asking these questions? They know you will not claim that you were there if you didn't go. So, number one is, you have a story in your heart. The man said, COVID-19 report, audit report, will be submitted by a day. The date came, it was not submitted. So the publisher said, he said, I have only one advice to give you. He said, try not to allow people to use your newspaper for their own interest, number one. Number two, try not to allow one interest group to use your newspaper to fight another interest group. Number three, try not to use the newspaper to fight your own personal interest. He said, if you strike a balance in this, you will be a successful editor. I never forgot it. I don't even know if the man expected me to keep it, but I never forgot it. So it was always ringing bell in my ear. This was the publisher chairman. He was telling me you'll be editor shortly, and then he was giving me advice, and I filed it away. The problem comes when the editor does not know where to draw a line, and he begins to use the newspaper for his own personal interest. Or the publisher doesn't set up a newspaper. Usually, it's altruistic for us to think, to insist they must keep to that, but that's the way it should be. When somebody sets up a newspaper, it ceases to be an organization for his own selfish interest. If you start, you say this story is dead. It's not dead. It's because you stop searching. If you stop searching, the story will die. If somebody stops you, at that point, even your chairman has no alternative than to tell you what he said to you. That woman simply played both of you. She set both of you up. She called in with you there, and he already knew you were there. He couldn't tell the woman who obviously was friendly that, sorry, he has to do his job. No, he wouldn't be friendly to do that. And you yourself, you couldn't say, my publisher has said this, or you begin to argue with your publisher on the phone in that office, you couldn't. So the woman was very smart in playing both of you. But what you do is that you just wait for another, and there's always a new angle to the story.
His name is Mr. Audit. Audits are a peg. In fact, a major peg for accountability. And audits are a major peg for accountability in any institution. But they're even more so in governance. Because institutions and those who run institutions tend to acquire so much power. But that power has to be mediated by a set of rules. And so you will need someone or body to ensure that those rules are kept. If the rules are not kept, then you often have misgovernance or bad governance. Then you have all manner of ills, embezzlement, corruption, and so on and so forth. So it's very important from our point of view that audit reports are scrupulously adhered to, so that we can keep governments on their toes. In this particular case, state governors in Nigeria have developed to be mini emperors, local potentates, who, if you see the way people relate to state governors, sometimes you find even commissioners going on their knees to talk to state governors. And because accountability is almost zero at the state government level, we find so much misgovernance. We're all complaining about roads, about health, about schools, and so on. Whereas you find state governors hiring aircraft, flying to Abuja almost every week, sometimes a couple of times a week. When was the last time you saw a state governor in a public aircraft? When was the last time? It's years ago. So audit reports are a vital tool which we need to emphasize to bring state governments, public officials, federal government to bring them, to put them on their toes and bring them to account.
So,
System, you know, the auditor general or the auditors, they have a set of rules by which they work. Usually, a budget is prepared by and supervised, its implementation supervised by the accountant general as a public servant. So based on the report of the accountant general, the auditor general can look at how the state government or agency of government has performed. If there are areas, if there are certain lapses, it's the duty of the auditor general to point those lapses out. And if they are grievous enough, and because the report goes to the State House of Assembly, the State House of Assembly should take up these reports and issue queries to the relevant government departments or to the governor himself and draw their attention to it. If the lapses are egregious, i.e., very serious, this can be grounds for impeachment. So if the state governors know that the Auditor General can cause their removal from office, then they will try to behave properly in office and not treat the public treasury as their own private pocket.
thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Benedict Mwakama, training coordinator of FrontFoot Media Initiative.
What's the role of audit in government?
That's a question for auditors. I am a journalism instructor, but yes, the role of the audit is to ensure that processes, procedures, and expenditures have been followed to the letter. It helps us to know what has happened, who has done what, have they done it right. The audit is a tool of accountability, is a tool that helps with investigation, is a tool that helps with monitoring what has happened and has not happened in government. So that's the role.
So how can the audit system in the country?
Tomorrow, when auditors begin to speak about it. However, from the general perspective of those of us who are citizens, we are hoping that by scrupulously reporting the audits and by the media following up, we will know what is actually happening. Don't forget that the audit looks at below the surface materials. In actual fact, it looks at the things that are not obvious to the public. So when it does that, it helps us to know what is happening behind the scenes, and we can then be better informed citizens. The idea is to make us better informed citizens. Even amongst accountants, audits are an arcane area. It's a difficult area. But here we are asking journalists to follow up on audit reports. One of the ways is to speak to the auditors who did those reports. Another is to highlight the issues that the audits have pointed to. Usually, each audit report has recommendations. It has issues that the auditor wants to highlight, to say this and this have not been done according to procedures or according to how it should have been done. So those are the ones that the journalists must focus attention on and report. After journalists have followed through on the audit reports and discovered areas where there are stories that have not been told. In one case, in Enugu, the audit report showed that 33 parastatals of state, various agencies of government, had not done audit reports for no fewer than 5 years. So when that reporter who attended our workshop wrote that story, the state government immediately sanctioned them and those reports started appearing. So those are the kinds of things that we expect the media to do, to shed light on the process, to shed light on hidden things, to shed light on those who are failing to observe what the Constitution says they should do. They should always have an audit report. And in those cases, a total of 33 institutions in a state had not done audit reports for some 5 years, some up to 19 years. So they were collecting government money and they were not giving an account of what they were using the money for. Paying attention to dangers, avoiding the dangers, paying attention to the things that you should do carefully. Courage does not mean you see fire and you jump into it. Courage means that you avoid that fire, find how to put it off, find how to do things intelligently.
Okay, let's
just know it. My name is Emeka Ezeze, of FrontFoot Media Initiative.
Okay, talking about all this.
Make those in public office to become accountable for their actions, for the decisions they have taken. And we need more accountability in this society. We don't have enough of it. And that is why our democracy is not developing as fast as it should. Audit is that tool that we need for people to hold those they have elected or those who occupy public space, to hold them accountable for their own actions. We can never say too much of it. And the way we can get this accountability done is that we have to get journalists to do their work. If journalists do their work, then those in public office, those in the public space in particular, will discover that it will be impossible for them to avoid accounting to those that elected them or those on whose behalf they're taking decisions that affect all of us in public. So that is a very important role. When people begin to tell you or to answer your questions or begin to explain themselves to you, it's easier to hold them, and not just accountable, but to hold them responsible for their actions and inactions, their failings. Their victories also will be extolled thereby. But let us develop a culture of getting those who govern us, those who operate in the public space, to talk to those they are doing this work for. We don't get it right now. We should do a whole lot of it. Following the rules, every auditors, that's why we're dealing with Auditor General's report. Auditors General are very powerful people. Even private corporations and public organizations all have internal and external auditors. Have you ever asked yourself why there is a need for an internal auditor or for an external auditor? Internal auditor should serve as an ombudsman for his organization. But then, if in case he leaves things out, there is a need for an external auditor to monitor him or her and to say, you left XYZ out. And we need you people to account for this, not just only spending money. Sometimes the policy that come, because when people are running things, running organizations, running government, the policies they get us into, they ought to explain them to us. Policies tend to make us waste money and nobody asks questions, or policies that may even come, and as a result, new things are happening. Many times where the questions are raised, where the pointers are raised, are in the account, in the reports of the auditors or the auditors general, in the case of public institutions or public organizations. When that happens, corporate governance is promoted, is enhanced, where people at all levels begin to explain why they did what they did, how they spent our collective wealth, our money, and why it is not just their private business to spend the money and then expect that we'll accept it as such.
do our trade as reporters and as journalists. I'm going to speak briefly on local government audits. Local government audits. But can I start by asking a question? How many of us know the names of our local governments? Where you live, or perhaps where you are from originally? How many of us know our local governments? 1, 2, 3. Okay, how many of us do not know the names of our local governments? Don't be shy. Don't be shy. Okay. How many of us know our local government chairman? Why? By name. Wow. This goes to the very root of the problem we have with local governments. Local governments have become practically irrelevant in the day-to-day affairs of the people who they are supposed to minister to. So you find that like many of you here, most people don't even know their local governments. They don't know who the chairman of the local government is and so on. The only time you hear about local governments really is when some issue arises. Some headstrong, quote unquote, local government councillor or chairman accuses the governor of sitting on their money, which is the norm. You know, local governments are treated as appendages of state governments. Yet, when they were created, I think under the Gowon administration, you know, before most of you were born, there was so much talk. Oh, the local governments are the governments at the grassroots are the most important governments because they deal with issues that concern the ordinary people right there, fixing drainages, fixing roads, taking care of the local dispensaries and health centers, and so on. So, because of this neglect, wanton neglect of local governments, you find that when you talk about accountability of local governments, it's almost non-existent. Non-existent because of the serious neglect local governments are suffering. Like I said in the notes that here, there was a time when no official government speech was complete without our being bombarded with talk of local governments as government at the grassroots. This was meant to highlight the importance of governments closer to the people and more responsive to their basic needs. But what has been the reality all these decades for when this talk of local government started, especially under the Gowon administration? So the story of local governments has by and large been one of marginalization. With state governors again, rendering them as ineffectual appendages of state governments. When local government allocations come, you often find that state governors sit on it. They hand this money over to the local government chairman or whoever, just enough money sometimes to take out basic salaries and pay electricity bills and so on. The rest of the money is sat on by state governments, by state governors in particular. And if you remember, for quite a while, the funds to take up the environment, which are supposed to go to local governments, were sat on by state governments. A long time ago, I think I told this story at the beginning workshop. A younger brother of mine was doing youth service in a part of the country, in the southern part. And you know, he writes business administration. So I'm not sure the local government chairman and his council was different between business admin and accountants. Anyway, he was made the accountant of the local government. At the end of every month, or when the local government allocation is released, after the state government has taken its bit, we'll go to the conference room, we get this money in cash and put it on the long tables. Long table. And someone will come and say, maybe about 50%, okay, they need so much money for salaries, so much money for electricity bills, and so on. Then the rest of the money is open season. The local government chairman, you know, perhaps collects about 50%. The councillor for finance or for works and so on collects the rest and so on. So no work is done by that local government. They don't bother about tarry roads. They don't bother about wiring for the dispensaries and so on. Because they know that the governor has taken their funds. So the governor is not going to bother whether the local councils are performing or not. You see, that was in the era of the military. But the situation is no better in our democratic dispensation, where our governors have not behaved any better than their military predecessors, whereby local councils were dissolved almost at will, and errand boys made councillors and their statutory allocations spread upon. You also find that maybe some little Obi or Oba or Emir would give his semi-literate cousin or underling and say, oh, it's going to be made the local government councillor. And of course, the local government councils take care of these traditional rulers. You know, money comes, you know, they have an obligation to give to these local chiefs as supposed to be operating. So if you have that kind of situation, we need to talk about accountability. We need to talk about audit reports. There are accounts to be audited. Often observed in the breach. The problem begins with oh, okay. I know you are coming there. The preparation. Much evidence of any special record, of any particular record, the preparation of these budgets. Finally before this Public Accounts Committee of the State House of Assembly. In other words, the budget of the local government council has the imprimatur of the State House of Assembly where laws are made. And therefore, it's not something that they can easily or should be tampered with at will. When the budget is passed, it becomes a sacrosanct document, not to be altered at the whim or caprice of any one individual, not even the state governor. See, the accountability provision concerning these audits, the local audits, is the same as the state governments. Queries by the Auditor General, where not so satisfactorily answered, are supposed to be a matter of interest for the Public Accounts Committee of the Legislature of the House of Assembly, and necessary sanctions imposed. Even more so at the local council level than at the state government level. See, for many of our people, we are talking about accountability and how the audit process is tied with it. See, for many of their people, the experience of local government, so I just ask us, do we know our local government? Do we know our local government chairman? Most of us, I'm sure, the answer is no. For most of our people, they hardly know about local councils because local councils, like I said, are ineffectual. Their experience of local councils, if you live in a place like Lagos, the experience of local councils is when they are being harassed by petty traders, people are trying to eke a means of livelihood. You know, by selling akara or boy by the roadside, and you find this council vans coming around and chasing them and carrying their goods and throwing into the bags and so on. So the experience of local government is of harassment for tenement rates, harassment of petty traders and food sellers, for all manner of levies and dues, which are often arbitrarily imposed and collected through tax. So for local councils, the economy they operate in is what in Lagos we call the agro economy. I don't know if you know what agro means. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. Agro touts. You know, these are street tops who harass people at motor parks and on the road and so on. We're going to talk about accountability under this system. And more so as the agro economy is an instrument for power and control. How some people have been winning on the back of this agro system to power. In the area of levies and taxes often illegal, but they force us when it comes to politics. Use to harass people, use them to harass people with regards to who they should vote for, especially that in Lagos. So the agro thing has gone from just taxes and levies, which nobody accounts for, to being an instrument of power and control that will not serve the end of accountability. So, you see, in the end, our problems in Nigeria, they're serious, but they're also very simple. We've got to have a government or governments that are committed to the public good. We hardly have that anymore. Most people go into government these days for what they can get, to service their own pockets. And when that happens, you know, you can't talk about accountability. Nobody holds them to account. We should be stimulated to look at our practice of the profession. You know, once again, if you're a journalist, it's not just any job. It's not just a job that you do to any living. A journalist must be interested by definition in the society, especially in this part of the world, in the society in which you operate, the good of society. We are acting as a voice for the voiceless, a voice for our parents back home, a voice for those who have no access to power. So we should take this training as something very serious, you know, to help us re-examine our place in the profession, re-examine what role we can play as individuals to bring about change. You know, wash out change, but change is not going to come from the sky. It has to come from certain things that we do, and as journalists we're in a very critical position to drive change. I mean, somebody mentioned about the compromises that come from the nature of what society has become. You know, maybe your proprietor or your editor is compromised by his association. You know, this has always been so, but there are various ways of getting around it. You know, if you as a journalist, you have your own basic integrity and you are a professional, I can assure you, you know, I mean, God is not asleep. You know, you are going to find a way to survive and to make good. You know, you are going to have favor one way or the other. But if you think that 100,000 naira or 200,000 naira being given to write a story or not to write a story is going to be solve your problems, that could be the beginning of your problems. I don't want to sound like a preacher or a pastor, but we've been in this trade for a long time, several decades, and we have seen that it is possible to do this job with integrity and to make good. So many people whom we knew in those days receiving brown envelopes, you know, and they're suborned to do all manner of unwholesome things. You ask yourself, where are they today? You know, where are they today? You know why? Their good name, they are not forgetting their good name is soiled, and so on. So I'd like to challenge all of us to rededicate ourselves to the profession, to take what is being taught here, especially tomorrow, what is being taught here as a call to action, as a call for us to rededicate ourselves to the profession, you know, and to make good through it. You make good, I assure you. You know, integrity is not easy to maintain in an atmosphere like this, where everything seems to be bent and corrupt and so on. But if you don't join the system, you're going to stand out, and you'll be in a position to affect the system for good. So I want to thank you for attending this workshop, and to also ask you to think of how you can individually contribute to making the profession better, but also to having a better country. We don't look at what other people are doing, but let's look at what you are doing and what you can do. And I assure you, at the end of the day, you may be a little hungry, but when you go to bed, you sleep in peace. Thank you.
The authority in this statement. I just have some few observations to make about local governments. One, the local governments in Nigeria are basically out of the reach of Nigeria's present-day journalism. If you go to a state, the local government that houses the state capital, and the maybe the 14 force surrounding it, are the ones the journalists can easily reach today. Things are so bad in the media houses that they cannot even fund reporters moving within the state capital. Not to talk of going to very distant local government. That's a very big hindrance. For those of us who have northern background, you know that some states as big as the whole of Southeast put together. So some local governments are not within reach of today's journalism. That's one. Secondly, while we are looking at how we will handle this topic about auditing in local governments, we have to understand the fundamental problem that the Constitution has killed the local governments. It's not just telling a reporter to go and audit a local government, because the situation in the local government is terrible. I had a privilege when I was in government to go attend a job in Uganda and go and see the story of what local governments are doing all over the world. And you come back to Nigeria and see our situation. It's miserable. Thank you.
Have access, have control to local councils. Then what autonomy are we talking about? So if we don't do something about these joint accounts, whereby the state governors or state governments have control, critical control over local governments and revenues, you know, I think we're wasting our time to talk about performance at that level. You know, I think it was under Obasanjo when he was trying to hound some state governments with the EFCC and so on. Most of those who have been hounded were those who are said to have taken local government money. You know, especially these ecology funds. Ecology funds are meant to go to local councils mostly, so they can use it for the environment, you know, plant trees and afforestation and so on and so forth. Hot erosion, which is ravaging many states, especially in the southeast. you know. So I do agree with you completely that we should focus our reporting on the whole issue of local government autonomy. Otherwise, we don't have any local governments worth the name.
Thank you. Any other comment looking at the audited accounts? How do we do that? We are going to show through the audited account that there is no accountability at local level. In fact, many of the states don't even elect local governments anymore. They just appoint them and they can be there for years.
Yes, that's what they're doing.
And once they're being appointed, they don't owe you any obligation because they never ask you to vote for them. But we get the audited account, which they must publish. That's it. The Constitution says they must publish the audited accounts. And some of them are actually, you'll be surprised. Some of them are publishing their audited accounts. The issue is, how much money are they getting? You then begin to point out the responsibilities. A story like that is not just a story that says local governments, because they're not autonomous, because state governments are constraining their freedom and they can't operate and they don't have money to work, and so there's no audit. But there is expenditure going on in every local government. Sometimes they spend the money in conjunction with the state governments. At other times, it is the state government that spends the money for them. But then there are also aspects that the state government allocate to them. But state government doesn't pay their salaries. They pay their own salaries. And you will be shocked the number of people that some of the local government will be claiming to employ. That alone. And the audit report will show that some of the payrolls are not sustainable. Either that even the local government that is not working supposedly have more workers, or that the workers they're claiming to possess in their payroll really don't exist. And those will be queries. Those queries will say that if we then are going to have an effective local government system where development ought to be, we need to have a lot more autonomy. And by the way, the Constitution guarantees autonomy for local government. Yeah, no, that is the point. So what we're pushing for really is not autonomy. We should be talking about the elbow room that these clever governors, and it started since 1999. We had about 20 local, 20 or 21 local governments. Then we had LCDAs, the local governments into many LCDAs. We are now at liberty to share the money among the LCDAs in the Constitution. And the state government went to court. You also know part of our problem. The same judiciary will tomorrow tell you they need autonomy. But the way they adjudicate on those matters neither solves the problem nor charts a way forward. In reality, local governments are non-existent in Nigeria, and that's the truth. They are just existent in name. So how do we get them back? We now know that how many towns can a state government develop in a state? So how can a state government develop all the roads there, all the primary schools, all the health centers or hospitals, all the infrastructure of people moving around, even doing drainage system, collecting refuse? These are all local government responsibilities. But nobody knows. He asked you a question when he was beginning this presentation. How many of you knew your local government by name? A few persons said, in fact, my friend at the back said, it's not possible for anybody not to know local government by name, because we are going to fill a form at some point and they will ask you to put the name there. But so we know them by name. And part of the chairman, I don't know how many of you know the names of the chairman of the local government, even where you live now in Abuja. Do you know the names of the chairman of the local government? They don't. So the problem is so large is one of the areas that we have to find a way to focus on. It suits the politician the way it is now. What we're doing here, remember we said, this is better. We said that this is preparatory. If you notice, even though we are about to amend the program somewhat because some people who should be here turned out like the auditor who came had to plead to go back and strengthen. After seeing the presentations here, he now decides that he has to strengthen his own presentation. And we have to move that tomorrow. But it has enabled us to now give you something we didn't plan. This is saying to you, how can you find audit reports? If I ask you now, many people don't know where audit reports are. Huh?
That's true.
Yes. So, if you are going to do a story, you must know where it is. You must know how you can read it. Then, after that, we then tell the story. How can we write stories on audit reports so that tomorrow, from the beginning, we will not take the auditors themselves, the accountants, where the list we have tomorrow is illustrious, as you can see. The last person there will be I think it's the immediate past president of ICANN, and he's coming from Ghana to deliver this. He told us, we were asking him to nominate somebody because it's big. He said no. I would like to come myself if it is on Thursday now. I will say we'll move it to Thursday. So you will see Elijah Ismail and Mamadu Zachary, he will come here and we said, after all the knowledge about the Auditor General's report, tell us how Auditor General's report can now be used to advance democracy and good governance, deliver good governance. So our faith, our hope is that when we're all done here, all of you will even be a little bit of experts in this issue of budgeting. By the way, Chido has not told you, I thought Chairman was going to tell you this. When we did our workshop in Oka for Enugu State journalists and Anambra State journalists, we had close to 15, 20 journalists from Enugu come to Oka for it. A particular journalist had followed up a story in Enugu. First, he found that MDAs in Enugu have not been audited for over 15 years. Tell me what kind of state is that? The account of MDA, but he found it because they were reading this report, and then he followed it up. When the story came out, the governor, the last governor, gave the MDAs, I think he gave them, I don't know how many, 2 weeks that they must all begin auditing all the accounts for the 15 years. Of course, they can't be finished in 2 weeks, but begin. Now, that's the effect of stories we're talking about. That a man who should submit his report didn't submit it. When you put a report, it's not only him. All the other auditor generals will become afraid. But is our report ready? We don't want somebody to come and do story on us.
Senator Olumese, in this presentation, asks and answers a very critical question. Where does a journalist find state audit reports? Let's go there. In the best possible scenario, the annual report of the Auditor General of the state will be proudly shared with the mass media as soon as it is delivered to the House of Assembly. They will bring it to you. They will send it into your inbox to say, here is our audit report, the annual report of the. After all, what public document could be more public? You will expect copies to be available in the Auditor General's office, at the House of Assembly, from your constituency representative or their press aide, from the websites of those officials and officers. Remember that we are describing the best possible scenario. In that scenario, some of you will be able to make phone calls immediately after this workshop this afternoon and have a copy of the latest report maybe establishment unit. Yes, let's go. But you did not see the 2021 copy either. So if you ask for that, or for every single report since, let us say 2015, you will have all of them on your desk before the week is over, in the best possible scenario. You may even have developed a certain fascination for this subject, realizing that the audit reports of every state are important towards fully reporting this country. With fascinating new insights, you may be leaving here shortly with dreams of obtaining from every Auditor General a copy of every annual report since 1999. That would be some 756 texts, a veritable library. And even if you decided that you would begin with the reports of these two states from which reporters are assembled here today, that would still be a handsome 42. Or since reporters are instinctively charmed by the latest reports, let's say just 2 or 3 covering the COVID-19 period. Since 1999, Edo State should have produced 21 audit reports, or that of the nearest university where, for research purposes, they maintain such collections. Reports from the Auditor General of the FCT. We tried to get the Auditor General of the FCT who signed this report that you have. For the one place where everyone would understand your question right away and recognize the importance of the document you seek. In Borno, in Bayelsa, in Benue, in Imo, Oyo, or Sokoto, I imagine there is the same kind of investment of time and enthusiasm that a dutiful reporter would invest in locating the existing reports that he desires, in terms of reports of the past 2 decades in which the current constitution has been in operation. It is logical to believe that in the future, once the relevant authorities know of the interests of the mass media or a particular newsroom in this matter, that perhaps an arrangement can be reached that would enable them to receive copies on the first day of availability. Ask Google. But back to the office of the Auditor General of the Federation. What if he is inaccessible or has run out of copies? Where does the reporter find the reports of his desire? Well, he will reach for his computer or phone at any time of the day or night. Deploying the deep access of his good friend Google, he will track the Auditor General of the Federation down to his simple website, which is oaugf.ng, Office of the Auditor General of the Government of the Federation.ng. That's where you can get the federal audit reports. If you check www. Once there, and in exchange only for his name and email address, you will find, in addition to related reports, all the annual reports of the Federation since 1999. There are 27 of them, and yes, some of the reports are very long, but each carries vast promise for his newsroom, his byline, and his brand. What of state audit reports? That being the case, the reporter would naturally believe that the reports of the Auditor General of a state, any state, will be available once he steps through the door. In some states, that assumption will be correct, I presume. I mean, curious and diligent reporters are usually rewarded. But again, he might find that they lack copies of the reports, or, curiously, of the document of which he speaks. Ask Google again. Search for the Auditor General of the individual state. So you can do that on your phone now. As well. Better still, search for the website of the state government. The one that we published here for you, we got from looking at the FCT website. Meticulously hunt for an entry called Auditor General. For this search might be the following: www.directory.gov and then edostate.gov.ng Auditor General Report, step by step. And then you can also go to the specific 2021 or 2020. So it's pretty straightforward. And impressive that the latest report dated July 2022 is available. So we should expect that this July, Edo State should publish the more current one. It is supervised by them or to answer to them. So the Nigerian factor has happened to the audit report. And notice among the reports of the Auditor General, the audits of the local governments of the state. As quote, the Office of the Auditor General for Local Governments could not ascertain whether or not the councils obtained value for money for the above expenditure as well was auditing them. Yeah. Or audit queries issued on observed irregularities amounting to the sum of 3 billion attached. So, where does the reporter find state audit reports? Just blow away the dust, then remove the leaves and cobwebs. That's all. If you find nothing, you have just located where the gold is buried. Thank you very much.
Can I do without the mic? Hello. Okay. Hello. Good afternoon, everybody, and good afternoon to you, sirs. Thank you for the amazing job you have done for us today. My name is Marvelous Phillips. I happen to be the host of the Morning Drive on Silverbirds Rhythm 94.7 FM. And with all we have heard today, all we have learned today, sir, I'm quite young, and a lot of things are going through my mind. I want to speak the truth, but in journalism today, broadcasting today, we don't have that enabling environment. You tend to speak the truth, and at the end of the day, you get backlash. Now, if I decide to actually do extra research and find discrepancies, irregularities in the audit reports of probably whatever state I decide to divulge in, and I go out there and speak about it, I write about it, I write a piece about it, and it becomes a big thing out there, everybody agrees with me, what then happens? Where is the protection I would get either from the NUJ or from other journalists when I begin to receive a backlash? I want to understand that before.
The Constitution empowers you to do what you have to do. That's one. Two, your organization. I am sure you got the approval of your editor to write the story or the commentary that you have written. So your organization should stand behind you, and many organizations in Nigeria journalism have done that. We stand by our story, which means that this report that our reporter has done has our imprimatur. We support him. We sent him on it. The organization should support you. You have mentioned the NUJ. The NUJ has often come up to stand up for journalists. They do that regularly. They stand up for journalists. The other is that organizations, all of us now who work in organizations, should push, maybe through the NUJ, for insurance. You should ask for it. If you don't have it, when you go back, begin to ask questions. Why are we not insured? It doesn't cost too much. Sometimes it may even be lack of knowledge that is making some organizations not do it. It doesn't cost too much to insure staff. So that when you are going on that assignment, when they wake you up at night and say, the story has broken, you have to go. I was an undergraduate when, I was a fresh graduate when Jeremiah Obafemi Awolowo died. I was in the office because I was writing a story, and I thought, go to the office, sit down in the office, and tackle this story on a Saturday. So the announcement, SO is Sonado Lumes, the editor, then rushed in to the Chido, you are here. Good. Have you heard? I said, heard what? He said, Obafemi Awolowo has died.
You will go to Ikene now. Before long, 2 or 3 other reporters came. We drove to Ikene that night, but I had to first go home and say, Mama and Papa, I dey go Ikene. This night? Yes. Well, how are you going? There are 3 of us going. We are reporters. You know? But their concern is legitimate. What if you had an accident? What if anything happened? So you are right to express fear and concern, but that's not enough. It's to tackle it knowledge. The Constitution supports you, the organization supports you. Have no fear. Have no fear of atomic energy as Bob said, but none of them can kill us.
Stories that you really think are very good, try and sell the idea to your editor or your producer or your boss. Don't just do it alone, secretly. When the story is ready, you dump it on him. Some editors will like it when they see the story. Others will say, we don't want this kind of story in the paper or in this radio. Where are you going to broadcast it? You want to do this thing on this TV station, we don't want it. But if let it be that he's the one guiding you, directing you, and we sent a reporter, he's still in this town, but he's no longer practicing journalism. Just before I left, we sent him a year before that, go to the northeast. Nigerian journalists have now gone to the northeast. And we're waiting for soldiers. This guy from Lagos, we sent him to the northeast. We sent him to the soft area. We said, first of all, go to the IDPs. I'm telling you about your security, how you can also take care of it. He wasn't afraid. He said he's ready to go. He wasn't married. He's young guy. And he went. He spent like 2 or 3 weeks in the northeast. That long, no story coming from there until he returned. But while he was there, he was always talking to me because now I was an MD and editor-in-chief. I said to him, this assignment you are going, I am the editor of that assignment, not your editor. I just took it on. The editor is a very competent man, but I said this one, because I gave it to you, I want to edit it myself. I want to follow it. So he was calling me. That's how he told me, do you know that you cannot travel from Maiduguri? Because we say travel to this town. He said you can't travel like that. You can't just go and get into a car and start traveling from Maiduguri to anywhere. We in Lagos have no clue about life in the northeast. That boy came back, wrote the story. We didn't run it as one story. It was a series. I called the director of artists. I said, design it like a magazine story. We ran it, I think, 3 days consecutively, about 2 or 3 pages with photographs. That boy won an award, got a scholarship, and proceeded to Columbia University Journalism School. That's the best, one of the best in the whole world. He won an award for that story. But before he left, and before I left, a year had come. I said, you are going back there 1 year later. That is follow-up. Go back to the northeast. Go back to everywhere that you went to before. Track the people you have talked to before. See how they're faring now. Now, we're doing this from Lagos. The military didn't want any journalists coming near them. And the journalists didn't want to go there because they didn't want to die. We who did it, we have had our fingers burnt. We sent journalists to Liberia many years ago. During the war, we lost our woman. Our political editor, one of the best one, Chris, the money baby. We never saw his body up till today. They killed him. Because when Charles Taylor became president, he sent a delegation to the Guardian to apologize to us for the killing of the poor boy. And he died with another former Guardian journalist who was by then working for Champion. There were 3. The only one that survived was working for Concord. And how did he survive? He was sick the day Tayo from Champion and Chris from the Guardian wanted to go out of town to see stories. The other one had malaria. He didn't go out. That's how he became the only person that returned.
Talking
about budget as a public finance accountability tool. What is budget? We all do budgets in our various forms. We budget for things that we are going to achieve and the things we are going to do. So budgeting is not an exclusive reserve for government. Everybody does it. Now, why do we do budgets? Before we look at the topic, I would like us to identify some concepts in our topic. You are too fast. Okay, it's okay. I wanted to identify one and see from the audience if we'll be able to identify the rest. But it's already here. Number one is budget. Then finance accountability tool. These are the concepts we are going to be looking at. Next one. Definition of terms. Budget. Budget is an estimate of income, expenditure for a set period of time. And in public sector or public finance, budget is also known as appropriation of revenue and expenses. What is the income here means what comes in, and the expenditure is the amount of money or we are going to spend on the things we have planned for. Then budget is used by government, businessmen, individuals. Then accountability. A physical financial plan would be monthly, and normally the budget is usually drawn at a specific period of time, which is usually annually. Let me offer for students is also the study of the role of government in an economy. It manages a country's revenue, expenditure, and debt. Accountability. It's an obligation or willingness to take responsibility for one's action. That is it. The first one is efficiency and effectiveness. Openness and disclosure, misapplication and misappropriation, oversight and auditing. When we say that someone is has the quality of being accountable, it means that the person is willing to be responsible for the action he has. Efficiency. Efficiency is executing it within schedule and on or under budget. The person is responsible of carrying out a task that is given to him or her within the period, maybe before or within that same period. That means you are efficient because you have done that task based on the fact that the given period of time you were able to carry it out. Then effectiveness is executing a task no matter how long and what it takes. Then tool. A tool is an implement or a device that we can use to perform a task. Then accountability 2 is therefore to be honest and responsible managing the resource of a country. So budget as an accountability tool is that we should is capable of telling us how we'll be responsible with the resources that are placed in our responsibility. Here is how to frame the question. Is the budget a tool to honestly and responsibly manage a country's revenue, expenditure, and debt? Let's find out. As I mentioned earlier, I know many of us here, we draw budgets in our homes. I want to ask, how many of us here draw budgets or have a budget in our homes? That's beautiful. Please, I want us to be interactive. The discussion is not only for me, so that we'll all learn as we move. Okay. An individual in our own homes, we draw budgets of the things we want to do and allocate money or the resource to manage it. So we all do budgeting. Companies and organizations, there is one three documents that the companies and organizations use. One is called income statement. Then the other one is balance sheets or statements of financial position. The other one is also cash flow statement. How does a company cope if there is a gap, in the sense that if they did not budget and they are having issues with spending money and allocating a particular amount to each project they have, so there will be definitely a gap. Nigerian budgeting process. In Nigeria, the federal budget is an important tool used by the government to track and how to earn and spend the people's money. Because actually, the government gets its money from different sources, from taxpayers, from royalty, from fees, and all of that. So it is an important pillar of good governance, providing the minimum expectation of the citizenry in an atmosphere of safety. What this one means is that budgeting, we should be able, the Nigerian government or the public sector should be able to use accountability and use budget to be able to make sure that what is expected from them are provided. The presidency has ultimate power over budget to request. When the Ministry of Finance will send a call circular to all the sectors, the budget office now prepares the instrument for the executive that has power. They are the ones that have power to prepare and track the implementation of the fiscal policies. It is prepared, sent to the presidency for them to look at it, increase or reduce. Then he will now take it back to the the National Assembly for vetting, and they will take it back to the President again before it is signed into law. For business or organization, budget includes an income statement, balance sheet, and statement of cash flow. For government, the budget has 5 key elements. The first one is introduction and review of previous budgets, previous year budget implementation, presentation of estimates for the current year, and other strategic issues, including debt management and conclusion. This is what we are going to be discussing as we go on. Looking at 2023 budget, it has introduction, background, performance of 2022 budget, parameters, and update on 2022 budget implementation. Underlying macroeconomic assumption, parameters, and targets for the 2023 budget. Overview of the 2023 budget, debt management, strategic revenue, growth initiative, finance bill 2022, critical sectoral allocation in the 2023 budget, then conclusion. We are using the 2022 budget last year. We want to look at the performance of this 2002 budget and the parameters updates on the implementation. If we look at this chart, 1.48 barren. The exchange rate, they projected that the exchange rate will be 383. Then from the table we can actually see where the most government spend their money on. The next one. Okay, the deficit balance. They've already highlighted to us that the fiscal balance for 2023 is 8. You see the figures there, I don't know if you can see it. Then the items they're expecting is government overhead. Can you make it bold? Okay, the physical deficit for 2022 is estimated at 8.7 trillion. The deficit was 6.37 trillion as of November 2002. The total deficit financed by borrowing mostly on domestic source. So we're actually operating. Petrol subsidy will remain up to middle of 2023 based on the 18-month extension announced earlier in 2022. In this regard, only 3.36 trillion has been provided for. There will be tighter enforcement on performance management framework for GOEs that will significantly increase operating surplus / dividend remittance in 2003. They are telling us that we will still have deficit in all these ones. Please, let's go to the next one. Deficit financing. The overall budget deficit is as 10.778 trillion for 2023. This for healthcare provision, they intend to spend 51.6 billion. Then defense. So all the sectors have been allocated. Defense and security, 21.9 trillion. Infrastructure, 1.24 trillion, 5.7% of the budget. Then social development and poverty reduction, 3.7% of the budget, which is 809.3 billion. In conclusion, we define budget as a plan. Then, our topic says budget as a public finance accountability tool. How is budget going to checkmate all this allocation and all the plans and the project that government has put in place? Budget as a tool to allocate funds to different sectors and ensure proper utilization. Someone must be held accountable for this allocation. Secondly, government uses budget as a tool to identify areas of weakness to be reinforced, check why the weakness and who is responsible, promote accountability, assist government to determine what to provide for the people, to what extent, and how it should be provided. Helps government to prioritize projects, scaling down more important ones and downgrading the less important. Helps in debt management. From our table, we could see that from 2022 statement, debt servicing accounts for almost half of all the expenditure. Okay. In conclusion, it shows that potential to grow revenue through savings. Budget ensures that we grow revenue through savings and investment. It exposes the problem with revenue resources. Example, the difference between oil and non-oil revenue. Does it mean that Nigeria now earns more from non-oil than oil taxes and revenue? Yes. Thank you. Please clap for her.
I was in the National Assembly for 6 years. Authority, 1 minute.
I want to thank you all for your patience and for your understanding. Tomorrow is another day. Tomorrow we'll start earlier. We'll start at 9 so that we won't stretch. Yes, we won't stretch to the point where your timelines are stretched, where you are under pressure, deadlines and all that. Few final words? Yes.
Journalists who are after lunch and impatient with some of the things that she had to say, which is understandable. There are too many figures. We're hoping that we'll be able to start breaking down some of these figures for us. We are going to stop here. I think I take the observation of those who said, let's try and do this thing by 4, because of those of you who will produce. A couple of persons who have left alluded to that. One told me he had a program to start running at 5, and he has to be there, which really says if we finish at 4, he will be able to go to his program. He's in his radio station. And tomorrow we're not going to, today is slightly very tough, tedious, because we're just beginning. Tomorrow we're streamlined. And we're going to also make the presentation slightly shorter, because some of them will be fairly technical, and we don't want to begin to crack our heads on the figures that we're going to be seeing all the times. So we will begin here at the dot of 9 tomorrow. Please, let's come early. If we begin early, we really should be rounding up much earlier than the program says. We have already decided, since we have been forced by circumstance to push the technical side mostly to tomorrow, we'll be able to get it out very quickly. But that is the critical aspect. Then we'll do the conclusion, and then we hope you will be thinking about these discussions, what you have in your folder, because that is why we're here. And that doing stories and probing into budgets and Auditor General speeches or statements should be something that will be stimulating your head by now. What kind of area can I take to ensure that I cover this? I do a story out of this. Like I said, we're going to send you story pitching forms online, I think by email, and some of you might be by WhatsApp, depending on what you prefer. And I think that we should be, by the time we're done tomorrow, you would have had a little bit of the skills needed to use this to become better journalists and develop a certain level of expertise. And by the way, when we're done, there will be this workshop will be certificated, because we don't expect you to just spend nearly 2 days here listening to all this, taking notes, discussing. You ought to be an expert of some sort to say, this is what I now know about this, and this is what I can do with it. So we'll then have a conclusion, a wrap-up sort of, and we will distribute some certificates to everybody who will be here, who attended. So thank you very much, all of you, for coming. Our resource persons are all gone, but Mrs. Andiwe is here. So when we're thanking her, we're thanking all the other resource persons. But I think you guys have been very wonderful audience, and we have had these programs. This is the third, and I think that your own, we were not sure how you were going to respond because there is no state government here. But you have responded very well. In fact, you have more knowledge of some of the things we're inquiring into. So see you tomorrow. Thank you. Have a wonderful evening. But come here, we start off at the dot of 9. Thank you. You're looking. Have you been taking care of? Go.